Hi, my name is Brooke Horn, and I'm hoping to become an assistant principal or principal at a secondary campus like the campus I'm currently on, which is Coppell Middle School North. So I designed this presentation to address new educators, and it's just a brief overview of the program, the special education and 504 programs, and the role of the teacher within those two programs. Enjoy. Good morning, Village North. Today we are going to share with you a brief overview of two programs that many of our North learners are a part of. And going back to our school's motto of ensuring success for all of our learners, we want to make sure that we are ensuring the success of our special education and 504 learners. So to give a broad overview of the two programs and the differences between them. Special education and Section 504, both, the purpose of both of them is to provide an equitable education for children with disabilities. So that looks a little bit different depending on which program, but overall, the general purpose is to not discriminate against those with disabilities. So those students who are protected are the ones who qualify for each of those programs. The difference between the two programs is that when we are making decisions for special education students, that the parents of those students must consent to and be a part of the process of those decisions, whereas the Section 504 students, the parents of those students require notice but do not require consent. And then we'll go into what the evaluations and eligibility looks like for each of these programs later on in our presentation. So when we're talking about Coppell Middle School North, we are, as you can see here, it is a small percentage of our total population, which is between 900 and 1,000 students. In total, we have about 7% of our population that receives special education services and about 10% that receive services under Section 504. But again, it is important that when looking at these students that fall within these two programs, we need to make sure that we are doing what we can to provide to them a fair and appropriate public education. So students can qualify for special education by meeting two requirements. One is that they are 21 years old or younger, and the second is that they are at least 3 years old. Students can receive services before they enter kindergarten if they meet the needs or meet the requirements, which you can see listed here, A through G, of special education services. So when you're reading the definition of Section 504, the definition points out that a student must have a physical or mental impairment. So what is a physical or mental impairment? There's a long list of things that qualify as a physical or mental impairment, and that list is in front of you right here. However, I want to direct your attention to the mental or psychological disorder qualification, which includes emotional or mental illness, as well as a learning disability. Many of our students qualify for Section 504 under this qualification because this addresses the emotional and mental health of our students, but also ADHD falls into this category as well. So the purpose of, or the role of special education in 504 programs is to provide a free and appropriate education, to give accommodations or modifications that provide that free and appropriate education regardless of the student's disability, and to do those things in the least restrictive environment. Our role as an admin team is to monitor and evaluate the program by making sure that we provide all of our staff with opportunities to understand the program and the responsibilities, such as what you are receiving today. It is also to facilitate the identification and the evaluation and the placement of students, and then to follow up with those students as the need comes for annual meetings or reevaluation. And lastly, it is to make sure that everybody, all the stakeholders, the student, the parents, and the teachers involved with that student receive up-to-date current paperwork to ensure that the correct accommodations are being given to that student. In our state, we have about 5.4 million students in public schools, and of those 5.4 million, there are about 532,000 that receive special education services. That equates to about 9.8% of students, which has gone up since the cap was taken off in Texas of 8.5%. So recently there was a federal investigation done that determined that Texas was denying students with disabilities the tools and services that they needed in order to learn. So what does that mean for us as educators? That means that we need to equip ourselves with the strategies and the supports that can provide a quality, appropriate education to these learners. So your role as the educator, there are teams for the creation and implementation of these plans. That 504 team and the IEP team are made up of administrative professionals on our campus as well as classroom teachers. The teachers on each of these teams must be a teacher that has knowledge of the student. So it is possible that you will be requested to be on one of these teams at some point. But no matter who you are, if you are on staff or an educator in this school, you are required by law, it is not suggested, it is law, that you follow the accommodations, restrictions, or goals in the 504 IEP documents and plans as it pertains to your classroom and the education that you are providing to the learner. It is also your role to give input and feedback prior to any meetings, reevaluations, evaluations over the student. And then most importantly, your job as an educator of a special education or Section 504 student is to keep their information private unless it is being requested or you are discussing it in the context of one of these two meetings. We are, as you can see here, there are 6 types of interventions or approaches that we can take in our classroom when meeting the needs of our special education and 504 students. And those include in-class interventions, which are things that you would do in your classroom. Some of these are best practices such as seating, grouping, providing more time, polling students for small group interventions, or it might involve the co-teacher in your classroom or allowing that co-teacher who is a specialist, a certified special education teacher to pull those students from your room to provide instruction or assessment in a small group setting. Since we are a PLC campus, it is important that you use data to drive any interventions that you are making with these students and to help guide your decisions for those interventions. Instructional delivery can be a little bit difficult, especially right now with our distance learning and our in-person learning. It is important that you look at your students' accommodations and determine how that can best be fulfilled in the mode at which they are receiving their education at this time. And if you need more help with that, please see the special education teacher or anyone on the administrative staff can help you as well. Students may also receive supplementary services if they're a special education student, such as additional counseling, additional strategies or plans that need to be rolled out in the classroom. And if that applies to one of your students, you will be aware of that. We're going to take a brief moment and pause here to practice and put into action what we've just discussed. So I want you to imagine that you have a child in your class who is being evaluated for possible placement into special education due to a diagnosis of ADHD as well as dyslexia and information processing delays. So thinking back to those 6 intervention strategies and approaches that we just discussed on the previous slide, think about how you might best serve a student that has these needs: ADHD, dyslexia, and information processing delays. Write down your ideas and share them with a partner. Okay, now that you've had a moment to share your ideas with a partner, we're going to quickly go through some do's and don'ts to take with you to make sure that you understand some common mistakes that educators make and what not to do. So the first common mistake is predetermining placement of a student prior to an IEP. So discussing what you think might be good accommodation for students or what might benefit their learning is fine. You can discuss information or concerns ahead of time. However, you want to make sure that any decisions are made when the parents are in the meeting, and that we keep an open mind and don't walk into a meeting with the plan already predetermined. In addition, we don't want to make decisions based on only what is available at our school. So we don't want to put kids into a box of strategies or accommodations that we know we have available. We want to focus on the needs of the child itself and to determine what supports would best meet those needs. If we don't have the resources on our campus, then we will find those resources outside of our campus to meet the needs. But we do not want to try to put students within a box that we have pre-made. And lastly, most importantly, never, never, never leave out key members of the meeting. We want to make sure that we are following all of the requirements by law for these meetings, ensuring that everyone is present and has knowledge of the student or expertise in the area or areas being discussed. Parents are allowed to invite others into the meeting, but it is imperative that those people being invited into the meeting have expertise in an area that is necessary or specific helpful knowledge of the student as is relevant to what is being discussed. And then again, our most important job is to protect the privacy of the student and not allow people into that area that do not need to be there. Again, let's review. We are ensuring the success for all of our learners here at Village North. And we want to do that by making sure that we are not only following the law for special education and Section 504 students, but that we have a good understanding of what those strategies and accommodations can look like and where we need to go if we have questions. If you have questions now, please direct them to me. Otherwise, you are going to complete the survey that follows this training to earn credit for this special education and 504 overview. Have a wonderful day.